Yo, what is going on, guys? We are live. It is Thursday, Xbox Scorpio Day. All that goodness hit the interwebs earlier today. And you know what? I got a few friends to talk about it. Tim Dog will be here in just a minute. He's on his way from getting his Scorpio haircut. He literally etched the Scorpio symbol into his hair. So that's probably going to be interesting to see. I'm joking. He didn't really do that, but he did get a haircut.
It's too believable. It's too believable.
It is.
I know, right? But so until then, I got my really good friends. We have the one and only, the Canadian Destroyer, Maka 91. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, what's up? This is very last minute for me, but I think I'm up to speed with the Scorpio leaks, which are no longer leaks. They are now official news. And I'm not on a lot of sleep, so hopefully I make a lot of sense. But yeah, I'm just happy to be here for a bit, hang out, impromptu stream.
Yeah, and making his podcast debut. Oh, no, not really, but kind of really. My good friend, the one and only Love Boat Gopher. What is going on, Gopher?
How's it going, Ran? Thank you for having me on. It's like Christmas morning today. All the hype. All the hype. Finally, we get to open our presents.
That's right. That's right. And the presents were really good. So is there anything you guys want to touch on right away? Like something that like stuck out at you immediately when you were reading the specs? Because there was one thing for me, but I'm going to let you guys go first. If you guys have anything that stuck out.
No, I think like it's good that everything kind of upgraded together, right? Like we didn't see a huge upgrade in one thing and then something got left behind. I'm sure Tim will have something to say about Jaguar's CPU, but at this point, it doesn't really matter. It seems that they've made pretty significant strides with the CPU. So usually the CPU is kind of the bottleneck and the most expensive part to not be the bottleneck. So it seems like the hardware advancements they made in the CPU should be able to keep up with the rest of the console. And that's always been my thing. It's like you can have an amazing graphics card, but if you're bottlenecking yourself with something else, then you're not really taking a step forward. So they seem to upgrade everything slightly up. They seem to have the data transfer they need there. I wouldn't say there's one crazy thing that stood out to me though. So please let me know what I missed.
I don't think you missed much. Gopher, what stood out to you, buddy? What was the one thing that stood out to you?
The stuff we kind of expected or could have predicted, but the one thing that really stood out for me was the surplus, the big surplus in processing power. I think it was something like 30%, somewhere around there. And I don't know. I mean, to have that stuff running at 4K and still have that surplus that they could use, I mean, that really stood out for me.
Yeah, for me, honestly, it's something I've wanted, because I made a video a while back talking about my two problems with Scorpio, right? One, I didn't really care so much about resolution, because resolution really doesn't affect gameplay too much. And two, I like the exclusive, like true exclusives, like games you can only play in Scorpio, games you can only play in Pro. But one of the kind of caveats I left for myself was this performance mode, the boost mode, the thing that you get on the PlayStation 4 Pro, the PS4 Pro, where you could, if you don't want to play the game in 4K, you could play the game with a better frame rate. And to me, frame rate is way more important than resolution. So I was super pumped to see that in that article they confirmed that. And not only that, but like for what is a super sampling. So if you do have a 1080p TV, and there are a lot of people out there that do, that the image will be super sampled down to 1080p. But I'm so psyched because there are a lot of games that I haven't finished in my backlog, like Doom or Mirror's Edge or Mad Max or whatever, that hopefully get some sort of patch where then I could kind of choose. And not only like games like in my backlog, but games going forward. Because if presented with a choice of like Crackdown 3 running at 4K 30 or Crackdown 3 running at 1080p 60, I'm going to choose 1080p 60 because frame rates matter to me. And I thought that was like one of the most important announcements for me in that whole thing, was this idea that this is a reality, and probably even more system wide than the PS4 Pro stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Because I was cherry picking for information too. Like, as much as people were tweeting out, hey, it's 2.3 gigahertz, 4 quads, super sampling, I was trying to just pick out the kind of relevant stuff that I thought the majority of people cared about. And what I came out with was that the Scorpio has huge potential to make the Xbox One games better, both in resolution, loading, gameplay, like smooth gameplay, improved textures. And then even for people who are going to stay in 1080p, which I myself am strongly considering now, you can choose between your performance modes and your resolution modes. So you can downscale from a higher resolution to a 1080p image, or you can just run it at 1080p, but you're going to get better, game performance. Now, I'm a little bit iffy on whether this is going to be a dev by dev basis, whether this is going to be a Scorpio update only type thing, and whether we're only going to see this on games that developers care enough to patch, or whether this technology can somehow apply to games that are already optimized for Xbox One, are only console games. And like, I don't see some games, I just don't see how the Scorpio could improve them because of how they were developed. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure they mentioned in the article that like the dynamic resolution stuff, like those games most likely hit 4K, which is pretty cool. Games that drop frames that are locked at 30 or 60 will definitely probably hit their frame rate all the time, which is something that always bugs the shit out of me. Like, I hate playing a game and seeing those drop frames. So, because, like, look, I'm not a tech guy. I said that in my video. Like, you read that stuff and it's like Polaris and all this, like, the language I don't understand at all. I wish Tim was here, because at least Tim would pretend to understand that he knows what he's talking about. Where are you, Tim? Where are you? But yeah, like I was really struck by how impressed Digital Foundries seemed by everything. All the articles were extremely well written. Rich seemed like he was legitimately surprised and impressed by everything that Microsoft showed him, and I think it really came through in the videos and the articles.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the articles were a little bit hard to follow with all the information being split up into like 3 videos and 5 articles. And there was a little bit of like misinformation, like even just some inconsistencies between articles. So I wish things were a little bit more clear. Like, I wish Microsoft kind of had their hand in there and said, hey, could you guys edit this paragraph? And maybe they did, but could you guys edit this paragraph for it to be like completely 100% certain, what's going on here? So there was a little bit of confusion. Like they said, if your game's 1080p on Xbox One, it will be able to run pretty easily in native 4K on Xbox Scorpio. And a lot of people started running with the idea that every 1080p game on Xbox will just be native 4K, but I don't think it's that simple. There are unless there's a patch or an update, as far as I understand it, those games won't be able to just randomly output 4 times the pixels. That's not how it's going to work. And I think some people kind of picked and choose what they were reading and how they were perceiving it. And some stuff, there was just enough ambiguity in some of the statements for their impressions to be okay. But at the same time, I don't think it's as easy as, throwing in an old disc and not getting an update, not getting a Scorpio-related patch, and just playing a game in native 4K. That's not how it's going to work.
Yeah, you're probably right on that one. But, one of the things I didn't care for, well, personally, because I just don't care about backwards compatibility, is it'll make all the 360 games better. No screen tearing, better texture filtering. And, Microsoft has made a big deal out about all that stuff, about the idea of your your back catalog going with you, the 360 games. They've done a lot of good work on that. But I know you're just like me, Maka, and I'm sure Gopher's the same way. I don't care about 360 games at all, period, end of story. So I understand that's important to a lot of people, and that probably excites a lot of people, but I'm sorry, I'm just not going to go back to the 360 and see those games being played, or see if
I'm split on the issue, because I see the appeal in kind of upscaling these 360 games, but I think you and And Mac as well, you represent kind of a niche demographic. If anyone's played, every 360 game to death, I mean, it's going to be you, Rand. But I don't know. There's certainly a lot of 360 games that I think would be interesting to go back to and see what this hardware can do to them. But
this is kind of the way I look at it really quick. If I get a brand new spanking top of the line computer, the first game I'm playing is not the original Far Cry, right? Like, even though I know that I'll be able to play that game with better specs than I've ever played it when it first came out in 2002 or when I got a computer even 5 years after that, I know that right now I can load up the original Far Cry better than I've ever been able to. I have no desire to do that, and I don't know many people who would. But maybe I'm wrong. Sorry for cutting you off.
Well, especially with the games with gold, I mean, it's something that they could implement. I mean, a lot of the games with gold titles that are 360 backwards compatible games that have been coming out the past few months, I mean, they're not necessarily that appealing because you know that what you're going to be getting from them on the Xbox One is more or less the same that you would have gotten from them on the 360. Now, if you have this Scorpio hardware and you have these same backwards compatible titles that they're going to be putting with games with gold or whatever, they seem a little more appealing, and people might be more inclined to play them if they know that there's going to be a significant visual change in fidelity when they're going back to play these titles.
Yeah. Well, the big question I'm sure people would want to know is, do you think, and I know we're not all tech guys, I think Maka may know this stuff a little bit better than me or Gopher, do you think we'll see a large majority of games running at 4K 60? Ultra settings, because they said that in the Forza thing, which by the way is impressive himself, when he talked about how they ported Forza 6 in 2 days from the Xbox One and they ported it to Scorpio in 2 days, which they blew their minds. But when they were running that Forza Tech demo and they introduced the 4K assets and all that stuff, and it was running at 4K 60, and it was still had like overhead to spare. Do you think we'll see a lot of 4K 60 games, or only the type of games that are made for it, like track racers and stuff? Or I would assume like a game like Witcher 3 is probably impossible on that console. So do you think 4K 60 is a pipe dream, or should we expect like 4K 30 for most stuff?
I think if we're going to see it anywhere, it's going to be on the first party titles. I mean, I really don't see a lot of third party, whether it's Ubisoft or Activision. I don't think we're going to be seeing Call of Duty running 4K 60 anytime soon. But I mean, if this is what they're kind of billing the console on, I think definitely at launch, I mean, if it's going to be Forza, I think it'll probably be Forza, maybe something else. But I think it's primarily going to be the first party stuff that we're going to see it on.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Well, as far as I saw it, it's basically, multiplying something from 1080p to 4K and keeping the same frame rate, and multiplying from 1080p on Xbox One to 4K on Scorpio, keeping the same frame rate is very, very possible. So I would imagine that any games we normally play in 30 FPS in full 1080p on Xbox One, those franchises, I would hope, can continue in 4K with the same frame rate on Scorpio. The games that were struggling, like we saw Star Wars Battlefront 2 coming at 720p, don't expect that game to do 4K. And
you don't think Battlefront 2 is going to do 4K?
It might do 4K at 30, or it might just do like a 1400 upscale to 4K. But I think the general consensus is full 1080p to full 4K is possible. But when you start going from underneath full 1080p and trying to get to 4K, you're going to have significant issues, especially if you're also at the same time advancing your engines and your graphics and your calculations and your physics models. And if everything's pushing forward at the same time, I think 4K 60 is an unrealistic expectation for most games. 4K 30 is more realistic for a decent chunk of games. And I think some sense of an upscaled 4K is very realistic for the majority of games.
Yeah, I would agree too. Oh, look who finally decided to show up. Mr. Scorpio. How you doing, Tim?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's up, dude?
What's going on?
Back from your haircut?
Yeah, I got caught in traffic. Yeah, it was raining, but I go to one guy. But happy to be here. What a day, right?
What a day. I was telling everybody out there that you literally were getting the Scorpio emoji cut into your head for your for your haircut.
That's what I actually did do that. I have a Scorpio in the back of on the two sides of my head. You know, you got the old 80s when they used to carve it in. I got a Scorpio now right in my skull.
So I talked about in the beginning, I gave like what I thought was the biggest announcement to me, where I talked about the the game mode, the performance mode, the resolution mode, which I really wanted, and Gopher and Maka also said the things that they were most excited about. I want to know what you were most excited about. Out of everything in this whole article, out of all the news that came out today, what got Tim Dog's heart beaten like no other?
You know what? When I watched the Digital Foundry video, and I really think that people, if they haven't seen it, watch the Ledbetter 15-minute video when he goes into the specs. What got me was, I think that their attention to detail with this console, there's so much customization. There has been so much testing that was done. They basically could profile the games because this is a generation console. This is the first time. This is uncharted waters, so they could profile the games that the Xbox One to what Scorpio targets were, and they can identify bottlenecks. And I think it came clear to me that whereas in 2013 for Kinect they built the console for strictly Kinect media and then games, this was the real effort to do it for graphical intensity and just making a console strictly on that. And it shows in their work. I think they built DirectX 12 in hardware based. There's 60 plus customization to the GPU. This is not just something thrown together. They have something called they talk about how every chip is different in characteristics and how power efficiency of each and every one Scorpio is kind of like different in a way. And that's the way they cool it and the way they use the vapor cooling. I mean, this is, when it all occurred to me, it wasn't the specs that got me. It wasn't the 6 teraflop. It was how they went about this. They went about this really smart and really they went about this the right way. I think, I think they nailed it. The only thing left is price. If this thing is $399, forget it.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of people out there. I mean, where was our Red Dead Redemption 2 gameplay, guys? I could have sworn I saw people saying that today.
I knew we were yesterday. You knew you weren't going to get that though.
But I mean, I like the way this is kind of setting up. Like Microsoft has basically said, here are those specs, here's what the system is, right? And now you can kind of dovetail right into the games, which is the most important part. E3 is safe for games. We can talk about price. We can talk about that stuff. So let's start with price. Now that you guys know what's in the thing, you've seen Rich's. He thinks it's going to be $500. Mm-hmm. There's kind of two lines. A lot of people think since it's a Jaguar chip that it's got to be $400. There's no way it can be $500. But then a lot of people think, well, it's got that really impressive coolant system.
Right.
So if you had to, Gopher, you got all your life savings right now, Gopher. You're at the casino that you love,
black or red,
go to every week, and you're putting it down on one of the two. Which one is it going to be? What's the price going to be on the system?
If I were to bet, I would say $499 US. Now, I'm not saying that that's the right thing, though. They did a fantastic job with this press release and with these articles because it catered to a really specific demographic. It quelled the fan wars that were going on, and it really kind of elaborated on a lot of things where people were speculating on whether it was tech or this, that, and the other. But in terms of $499, I think that they could sell it. I think that it's reasonable in terms of the tech that we got shown. It would work. But I think if they did $399 or maybe $450, I think they would kill it. If they took a loss on the console, these specs.
Do you think they're going to take a loss on the console, though? I mean, do you think in your heart of hearts that Microsoft's going to take a loss, though?
I think it would be in their best interest. I think what they're trying to go after is a crossover. I think if they took a loss on the console, there would be significant more crossover.
So you think if Microsoft priced it at $400 against the Pro 350, why would anybody buy Pro, basically, is what you're saying? Like the advantage is there. All right, Maka, I think you might have a different take on this, right? I think you
no. Well, I
right.
mean, there's similar aspects that I think we have some parallel thinking, but I do think it's going to come in at the 500 mark. I would bet all my money against a 400. I think the cheapest we'll see is at 450, and at that point they'd be really squeezing just about every dollar out of their profit from the console sale, and hoping they could get it back on games and services. And as we make our way to games as a service, and as Game Pass and Xbox Live, and who knows, maybe some streaming services and games with gold and all that stuff, assuming that takes off and every console's generating monthly income for them at some capacity, then I think they would sell it at 450. But realistically, if I had to bet, I'd probably bet at 500. I would have loved to just get a bunch of PC parts announced, go to PC Part Picker and figure out exactly how much a PC of the same spec would cost. And you can get a pretty good guess, with some of the current consoles that are out. If you build comparable PCs, you can kind of get you kind of get the same performance out of the same amount of money. But it's not really that simple because of how customized the design is.
Right.
I would bet at $500, and I would say they will cut costs maybe with that CPU, but they're probably adding costs with the cooling system and stuff, which I'd like to read more about. But yeah, if I was a betting man, I'd bet on 500 today, US.
Yeah, that's the same thing. I kind of was coming to the conclusion that it was going to be 500 as I was reading that article. That coolant thing kind of really seems like it would push that price over the edge. Tim, what do you think? Because price is the most important thing on a console. I mean, that is one of the two reasons why the PS4 is where it is. It was underpriced. It was
right.
What do you can Microsoft afford to be $500 when the Pro's $350, or even, God forbid, above $500?
No, I don't think they're going to be any way above 500. I think you can pretty much write that down. Obviously, it's going to be $399 to $499 area. I think most people will say $499. They went with Polaris technology. They basically overclocked the GPU to 1172. So they kept pretty much similar to what they have. They added 4 gigabits of RAM, and obviously higher bandwidth. It's GDR. How cost comparison, and they're adding this new vapor, however, coolant system. I honestly, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be $499, but I don't also think it's going to be $399. I think $449 is where this might sit, because I think in the end that will be the price that will entice people, but they'll also make a little bit of money back, and it's just a fair thing. The $499 is definitely possible, but I'm going to go $449. And if I had to lean, I'm going to just say $399. I just think that they've planned this for a long time, but and they sticking with Polaris and customization Jaguar cores, to me, kind of indicates that they wanted to get the price down there because of the way that they're going with this the overclock and the heat. And all the stuff that they built into it. I'm going to say $449, leaning $399 if it had to be either or, $399 or $499.
All right. And Jez, my Xbox 2 buddy, decided to come crash the. What is this? The Xbox 5 now? I don't even know.
I don't know.
What's
breaking the rules?
A Roomba? No, that's not a. Yeah, we're breaking the rules here. So I asked everybody when they first joined the one thing that you took away that was the most important to you when you saw all these things? What was the one thing that kind of stood out in all this Digital Foundry coverage to you?
The confidence that Xbox have exuded by inviting one of their biggest critics into their house to take a look under their clothes, so to speak. That's a really bad metaphor, but
Ooh, baby.
They got to look in their closet. They looked at all. They're completely naked. There was all.
Are they cuddling now? Are they cuddling?
They're cuddling. I think Digital Foundry were. I wasn't really familiar with how Digital Foundry's authority before all this happened, to be honest. But it's quite clear, like the whole play. I mean, you guys might have already discussed this, but it's the whole play was it was about showing the confidence in what they've built and inviting like one of their harshest critics to take a look at it, and some of the language that Eurogamer used, you know, like we got words like remarkable and they said things like that. They did emphasize the confidence that the whole Microsoft team had towards this product. So it's definitely about weaving a narrative around the confidence in the product, and that was my biggest takeaway personally. Because I don't know, I'm not a big hardware guy. You know, my eyesight's really bad, so like 4K is lost on me to some degree. I'm looking forward more to the visual enhancement. So like seeing Xbox One Forza running with such a huge amount of overhead is really encouraging, because you know that when developers get their full, you know, when they get their full head around and their developer toolchain around Scorpio, it's going to produce some really gorgeous games. You just know it.
Yeah, it was Rand. Rand, did you go out to take the dog out?
Rand's muted. I don't know if he even knows.
What did you think?
What did you guys say about it?
I have a question for you, Jazz, if I could ask. What did you think of the customization that they talked about in the GPU pipeline? Things such as 11 instruction sets and the technical stuff at that core. How DX12 is actually baked in hardware into this. What was your takeaway from all of that? Because I thought that was really interesting. Some of the stuff that they talked about, as far as all that.
Well, I caught the tail end of what you were saying about them wanting to keep costs down, and I think like obviously cost has been a huge consideration when they've been building this thing. They haven't been building this as a device that is going to be cost prohibitive, like the Surface line, for example. Mm-hmm. Like with the Surface line, if the Surface Book was cheaper, they'd be undercutting their partners like HP and Dell, and they'd be, you know, pissing them off. But they don't have that worry with Xbox, so they can really consider making it as cheap as possible. And I think leveraging DX12 and the software side of it, because that's something that Sony can't match without licensing, you know. And if Xbox are leveraging DX12 and they're using as much of their own tools in-house to make Scorpio as powerful as possible while being as cheap as possible. And you can just tell that there's a huge amount of research and consideration gone into the price of this thing, which is why I'm still predicting $399, which I know is a bit optimistic, but how killer would it be at that price point?
Well, I think the one thing that we didn't mention earlier about the price point that I think is worth noting is that all of our accessories are going to be backwards compatible in the system. They've reiterated that over and over and over again. Yeah. And I think that it would be a huge missed opportunity for them if they didn't launch some sort of version of the system that was essentially an upgrade version, an Xbox One upgrade, essentially. Just a bare bones, you get the console, no accessories, nothing included, and then you can essentially sell it for whether it's $50 or $100 less than it would be if you were starting anew.
Does that include a really trade-in? That is a trade-in program where you have to give away your old console? Then yeah. I mean, a trade-in program, I feel like they could offer you a little bit extra for your Xbox One you're trading in to lower that price for you, and it would be like an upgrade. You would be paying less, but you would also be losing your Xbox One, which if you're doing it for an upgrade, I imagine you're completely fine with, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would think that GameStop and all those companies will probably have a trade in because they did with the Xbox One S. Like I was able to trade in my the fat Xbox One. I traded in my 360 and a game, and I basically got an Xbox One S for fucking like $20, which then I'm going to then take my Xbox One S when they have a trade-in thing at GameStop for probably, I don't know, 200 or whatever, 175, and I'll put that towards Scorpio, because I don't need two systems. I'm not like, Doc or anybody or Tim. I just need one system for myself. But I did see a lot of worry today about the CPU. A lot of people are worried that it's going to bottleneck the system in the long haul.
I thought Digital Foundry said themselves that they don't believe it will be a bottleneck, and I feel like a lot of the backlash of that is just people hearing the word Jaguar and not applying, their common sense to the situation.
Right.
I mean, and maybe it will be the bottleneck. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, because that's why I was
been,
asking you guys, because
sorry.
I'm definitely not the one to ask. I figured maybe Jez or Tim, because Tim knows everything. Tim knows.
Yeah, right. Well, one of the good things with this, and I think Jez, and they talked about this, is that being that this was a console refresh, they never were in this position where they could profile games. They could profile Gears of War 4, and they could see where the bottlenecks are, and they could see, how to optimize against it. Like the amount of research that's been put into this is really the thing that really got me when you first questioned, because they really went into this, and they were doing stuff that's never been done before in a console generation. They were profiling the game. So I don't see the CPU. They talk about if you use DirectX 12, you get a 50% overhead load taken off, supposedly. Okay, that's what they're claiming. Digital Foundry's complaining. You could claiming that. Xbox obviously is. You could watch the video. So if you're using DX12, let's take Battlefront 2. Well, Battlefront 2. That's a perfect example. It's going to be DX12 title most likely. That's going to have a real big head start right away on the CPU. So I think that's part of the stuff that they built in. And obviously they want developers to use DirectX 12, and a lot of people will start to do it, and this is an incentive. But, that's part of what's going on here. There's customization here that you just can't call this a Jaguar. It's an evolved Jaguar that is been tested.
I think it's really funny actually, because I tweeted back in January that I was 99% sure it wouldn't be Jaguar, because I just thought that technology was so out of date, and it was like it'd just be strange if that it was just a basic Jaguar processor. And the fact that I tweeted that, some Sony fanboys went and dug that up and started spamming all my followers saying, "Oh God, look, Jez tweeted this in January. He's an idiot." But it's not just your basic Jaguar. You can't just. It's a disservice to what Microsoft have done with the chipset to just call it a basic Jaguar job. It's like you said, it's an evolved Jaguar, and it has these features. But the thing is, we talk about these features, but it's not going to matter if developers don't use them. And the true bottleneck is going to be PS4 Pro and the PS4's install base, because PS4 doesn't have DX12 and it doesn't leverage these features. And if developers feel like it's not worth their time to make a separate, effectively a separate SKU for Scorpio and DX12, then we won't see those improvements. And we had this problem with the SRAM, and are we going to have this problem again with this new unique architecture that's unique to Scorpio? We're going to have this problem again. That's my worry. And also, you got the whole UWP angle. Like Microsoft's pushing developers to use UWP because they want it on Windows 10 Store. They want XPA and stuff. Is that going to, again, throw another argument in the works that developers will turn around and say, well, we're still going to develop first for PS4, and then we'll port to the Xbox ecosystem. We're not going to leverage these unique features. That's my big worry. Mm-hmm. So Microsoft need to show at E3, games in general. The whole narrative right now is that Xbox's lineup is weaker than PlayStation's, but if they can show that developers are going to use these unique Scorpio features, to make their games not only higher res, but utilize this extra stuff to to have better texture filtering and draw distances and all that stuff. Is
Right.
Microsoft going to demonstrate that in a way that mass market consumers will understand and the hardcore will understand? That's the real challenge that Microsoft have right now. They've won the hardware war, whatever. Now we're going back to the ecosystem war, and it remains to be seen. It really does.
Well, yeah, because I was told this a few months ago, that the real battle, like even though Scorpio is going to be way more powerful than the Pro, like we all knew it, right? But I was told the real battle was going on behind the scenes about Microsoft trying to court developers to dev for Scorpio first, while Sony was going to their developers and trying to convince them not to, basically. It was all being done behind the scenes. And yeah, that worries me too. That worries me that because Microsoft's install base is so low, I mean, in comparison to PS4, I mean, it's doing fine on its own right, that developers don't want to do any extra work, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to do an extra SKU. Like, is all this power going to be for naught outside of Microsoft's own first-party games and games they have marketing deals with? That's kind of one of the worries I have. Like,
It is a worry, and I've got contacts in other publishers, like Ubisoft and EA, and they do voice these opinions to me, that there is this consensus amongst the big AAA publishers that the ecosystem really is. I mean, the install base really is a concern for those sorts of things.
Mhm.
So Microsoft, like, they've won a battle today, but the war is far from over, and these are things that Microsoft need to overcome, and they've got to have a plan for this sort of stuff. So we'll see at E3 what their full plan is. And I did leak last week that I had like this marketing. It was a marketing specification, like for a company who were pitching to Microsoft. Yeah, we want to help you market Scorpio. And Microsoft were like, okay, well, these are the games that we want you to market. And that was the list that I leaked. And it was Red Dead Redemption 2, Battlefront 2, Forza Motorsport 7, which is why I thought that Digital Foundry played Forza Motorsport 7, because it matched up with this other leak that I had. But it turns out that wasn't the case. But it's not just a case of a few multiplats as well. It has to be like, they have to get the multiplats on their side, the third-party developers, the big publishers, the whole indie scene, which they seem to have got a good handle on now. But then you've got their own exclusives, which we know very little about past this year. So, there is a huge complicated thing after today. Today's one, but they've really got to show that the ecosystem is going to be healthy after today.
Yeah, that is true. Well, that brings to probably the ultimate question: is any of this going to matter in the long run? Is Microsoft even concerned with competing with PlayStation, or are they more content to just be profitable? Because at some points when I look at this stuff, I'm like, yeah, Microsoft's putting out a good system for the core gamer, but at other things, depending on where they price it, like I think Microsoft is just interested in maybe just being profitable over the long run and not necessarily trying to catch up with Sony, because the question is, are people going to abandon or buy an Xbox Scorpio because it's going to run the multi-platforms better than the Pro? And I think some people will. I think there's a large contingent of people that will want the best tech for their games, but I'm not sure that's a large enough portion of the audience to make a dent. Or am I just crazy?
I don't know, man. I mean, it is the thing is, no one expected the Xbox One S to sell as well. Don't you remember all those articles like Microsoft killed the Xbox One S straight away, blah blah blah. But then the Xbox One S wanted to be the best-selling console for the last half of 2016. So sometimes the market responds in ways that you don't expect. And I do think that Microsoft have and I do see parallels with Surface, like the Surface RT was a total flop, and they came out with the Surface 2 which was a big improvement. But then like they showed the Surface Pro 3 and it was like, wow, Microsoft have really nailed this. And it created this sort of wave of confidence. And they showed the Surface Pro 4 and the Surface Book and now the Surface Studio. And these devices are selling purely on the confidence that Microsoft are building a really powerful, long-lasting hardware ecosystem that you can really get invested in long term. So like if they nail the messaging with Scorpio, and it's not just like this is a PS4 Pro competitor, it's a Xbox One iterative upgrade. If they really nail it as a single product, and it looks good and it's got the right price, and it really, really speaks to, you know, that consumer desire to make a good long-term investment, I really think it could surprise people. You know, like Sony's PlayStation 4 Pro reveal was really stunted, I felt, and it was like it was quite low key, and it wasn't very confident, you know.
Well, they had known about Scorpio. That's probably part of it. You know, they might have been, if they didn't know that Xbox was in the loop, they would probably be pounding their chest with 4.2 and double the power, and you know, you get 2 PS4s. But once they knew that there was Scorpio on the horizon, I watched that and I felt that was definitely looming over their heads.
Yeah, it did derail things a bit, but it's interesting. It's definitely not like a one fight. Nobody's won.
No,
yeah, well, go for it.
It takes time. Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, well, go for it. Hit me with your thoughts, man. Hit me with those thoughts.
Well, the thing that I was thinking, I mean, you referenced the PlayStation Pro reveal, and one of the things that I kept going back to was whether or not it would have been more beneficial to adapt that sort of format to this reveal as opposed to going through a third-party website. While I do think that the general consensus with these articles, like we've all said, is that they exuded a confidence about the technical capabilities of the system. I don't know whether it has the sort of mass appeal as something like PSX. I mean, I know that they both kind of cater to their own relative niche demographics. But generally, I think that they did leave enough stuff open after these articles that they do have enough to go off on at E3 to make it more of the official reveal, more or less.
I like to look at the scenario a little bit like I look at cars. And if you watched, I used to watch a lot of Top Gear, but obviously I don't anymore because who the hell watches Top Gear nowadays? But look, you would see these cars go around the track, and it became quite obvious very quickly that the horsepower or even the horsepower to weight ratio is not the only thing that matters. You need things to go along with that. And much like the Scorpio, we have a machine with a lot of horsepower. But we also need more parts. There are more moving parts to this machine than just the tech specs that need to all be going and working in perfect synchronization to get the most out of the horsepower, or else you're just wasting them. And in the Scorpio's case, we need to have the right tech there. We need to have the right software. We need to have the right games. We need to have the right pricing, the right branding, the right look of the. There's so many more parts to the equation that are still a little bit up in the air, that with the tech specs announced today, it would be irresponsible to try to determine an outcome to the next console generation based on only the tech specs. You know, obviously we're trying our best here, but there's so much more to the picture that determines whether or not Scorpio is successful, similar to an engine of a car. You can't just have an amazing engine and have a bad rest of the car, or else you end up driving a Ford, right?
A Ford.
So look at Ford Mustangs.
Some people are going to take offense to that, man.
They go really fast. American muscle cars go real fast in a straight line. And although some people really like going really fast in a straight car, they really like extra pixels on their TV. A lot of gamers, a lot of race car drivers prefer their cars to be all-around performers and prefer their gaming consoles to do a lot more than just shit out a lot of pixels on screen all at the same time. So that's all I'm saying is, like, specs are super important, and it's great that we got these amazing specs. There's a lot more pieces to the puzzle before, any real definitive statement can be made about, the future generation of consoles.
Right.
We don't have to go. I think sometimes we get away ahead of it, but the market will justify itself. We're talking also multiplats now. Now, Xbox has the ability to leverage this. They ran Forza 6 or Apex, and they had all that headroom, and they said that they can make the game look that much better. So even their exclusives, I think you can really get a high bar on the Scorpio exclusives. Not that the Scorpio game, obviously, it's not going to be exclusive, but you can get a high bar for Xbox One exclusives on the Scorpio. So things like that. I mean, there's a lot of things that are coming down, and I think that the general consensus and first impressions are very big. This is a big one, and I think they nailed it.
I saw something today after it was revealed, right after Digital Foundry had all their videos up and everything. I noticed an interesting trend among other media. Immediately, I saw Jason Schreier of Kotaku talk shit.
Did he really?
Oh yeah, he was like,
wow.
He's like, all this isn't going to matter because you can't compete with Sony's games. So I was like, and that was like 5 minutes after everything came out. So I was like, okay, put that in my back pocket. And then I saw Polygon pretty much say the same thing. All the specs in the world, Microsoft, but you don't got no games. Right. So
I think Kotaku published an article as well. Kotaku UK
and Gizmo, they all piggyback.
The thing is,
Kotaku and Polygon aren't relevant, but go ahead.
So how much of that is professional jealousy from the fact that Digital Foundry got this huge exclusive, and those other websites are irrelevant? And
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of it. I think a little bit of it is trying to appeal to what you think other people want to hear from you. And if you think that other people want to hear that Xbox is going to fail, you might say that to try to get on people's good side, whatever. The truth of the matter is that if Sony had that opinion when the Xbox 360 was leading the markets, we wouldn't have PS4. So that argument gets thrown out the window because essentially you're saying, why have competition in the market? Let's just have a giant monopoly where Sony can just produce anything they want and it's our only choice. Look, he's right in saying that we need games and we need something for the console. That's a fair statement. But to say, what's the point of all of this? You're just going to lose. That's where you lose all sense of credibility, all sense of journalism. There's no meat to that. There's no meat to that statement.
So true.
You can't just say it.
I wanna applaud Ben found the mic, but it'd be really annoying.
You wanted to play? I mean, because I saw it, and because I was just like, okay, look, the press, they fight for clicks, they fight for thing. They're probably because someone asked me the other day, they're like, Rand, aren't you surprised none of the websites are talking about this? And I said no, because they basically be promoting Digital Foundry and Eurogamer. IGN's not going to do that. They'll source the info when it comes out, but they're not going to try to drive traffic over to Eurogamer. So I thought that was weird because, look, I said this in my video today, and I know this is going to ruffle some people's feathers in the chat. I already know this. But look, the narrative shifted, okay? When the PS4 and the Xbox One launched, it was about power and resolution because that's what it had to be because the system launched with NAC. Of course, it had to be about power and resolution because you launched with NAC. Why Xbox launched with way better exclusives. That's just, it's a subjective opinion, but I just find it hilarious that the script flipped, and because Sony has a deluge of exclusives now, and Microsoft has a gaping hole where Scalebound and Fable Legends used to be, that suddenly Microsoft doesn't have any games, and Sony has all these games, when that wasn't true for the past, 3.5 years. Yeah. So it's interesting to see Jason Schreier and all these people say that shit when they sure as hell weren't saying that shit 2-3 years ago. They were saying, Star Wars Battlefront's 900p, but a blurry 720p on the Xbox One. So it's interesting. Make your own conclusions from that. I know I did. So
I think you're right. It is sensationalist journalism, but a lot of people that I've seen talking about this, they kind of describe it as some sort of cabal of industry journalists.
It is, man. They've got a Discord where they all share information, And that's why like a lot of these outlets didn't publish anything because they were preparing their content for after Digital Forge, Digital Foundry, sorry, after they went ahead with it. They had their content prepared because they had been given a heads up by Eurogamer, and they didn't get in on the leaks because they'd been given a heads up by Eurogamer. I mean, I don't have evidence of that, but that's the way it tends to work. Working at a big website, I know this. It's like sometimes like you tip off a big website about you tip off one website that this is coming, they'll tip you off another time, and it sort of works like that when we look at tech and laptops and stuff. So I don't see why that wouldn't work that way for games as well. And but you know, the difference is like laptops aren't such a contentious thing. There's not all this toxicity and attacking. You don't see like these, oh, HP sucks and Dell rocks. You don't see that in laptops, but there's so much toxicity in game journalism. There really is.
It's because for consoles you only have the two choices, and in a laptop there's so many choices. No one really cares. You know.
It's true.
Yeah. And also, it's like you get
you gotta head out, Mark.
controversy gets clicks.
You had to leave.
No, I'm still good for a little bit here.
Look, make your own conclusions and all that stuff. I'm not saying there's a media bias. I'm just saying, like, look, and I'll be first to admit, Xbox fanboys flip too, because in the beginning it was about the exclusives, and right now it's about native 4K. You know,
But
like
the thing is that
everybody flip flops.
Yeah, but now you're talking about the media. When the media came out, they made it out to be like AAA third-party exclusive. To have that is such a big deal, and you know now they're not even talking about that. You know, I mean, every article when there was a mention of Xbox being 900p, I mean those guys had that stuff out there right away, and they all picked up on it. So I think that they do all feed off each other. I think that the sense of gaming journalism in itself right now, not excluding Jez, because Jez actually does his job, I don't think that they work very hard. I think that they do what Love Boat Golf or whatever that's called. They all like, you know, they just sit and they wait for the news.
Sensationalism.
Yeah,
sensationalist.
And then they don't think for themselves. They just write what, you know, they all piggyback. Like Gizmo did the same thing. Oh, it's not that, you know, the same 5 articles, the same 4 articles. Oh, is Xbox One confusing? Is Xbox One S? Did they kill it? How that all piggybacks. So the state of journalism right now is they're just doing damage to themselves. They're getting eaten alive by 400 people here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
They're getting eaten alive by people who actually are on top of this stuff.
GameSpot couldn't even find the settings on the Xbox One.
They're not getting
find the settings. There's visual proof of that.
You're not getting exclusive.
Did you see Arthur Guys playing fucking Doom in his little video? I mean, this is the guy who's reviewing. Look, I've said this before. I played against journalists in Halo 5 and other games. Maka's played against people. We destroy those guys. Like when you play early against the press. Because they're not very good at what they do, because that's not necessarily their job. Their job is to actually write and write well.
Yeah.
You know, their job isn't to actually be good at those things.
I respect some game journalists. Obviously, some are probably a little more popular than they should be based on their gaming experience. A lot of these dudes, though, they come out of college and they have somewhat of a hobby with video games, and they find themselves with a journalism degree, and they don't know what to do, and they start writing articles for a gaming website, and they kind of go through the motions, and they get promotions, and eventually they end up in these big positions in gaming companies when they're not real gamers. And that's a part of it. I think it's weird that they're saying, game over, Xbox, you have no games. Like, the Scorpio didn't come out today, guys. I don't know if you realize this, but they have another couple months to announce these games and even more months to release them. Like, you can't call it game over for either side based on the specs, and you can't call it for game over for either side based on the games. Yeah, I said on TXR, it's tough being an Xbox fan right now because we don't have a lot to look forward to, and the games library this year, let's call it a little light. But to say that Microsoft has shown us all of their cards and they literally have nothing left in their deck, game over, like, come on, get over yourself.
I think it's there's no arguing that games journalism is certainly more venomous than other subgenres of journalism. But I think you raised a really good point earlier, Rand, where you said that maybe one of the reasons why they weren't covering this event in a more positive light was because they would essentially be drawing traffic to their competitors at Eurogamer. So I would be interested to see when we do have the actual reveal of the console itself, how it looks, perhaps even the interface, whether or not we're going to see some more favorable coverage or whether or not it's going to stick more with the status quo that we have right now.
Well, I mean, games drive this is, games drive this industry, and like I'll be the first to admit, like I think Sony's lineup of games this year is far better than Microsoft's, especially if God of War gets out. Exceedingly so if Days Gone comes out. I think Horizon just came out. I think Horizon, well, I put Horizon and Crackdown on the same kind of pedestal, but I thoroughly expect. No, I'm not even going to say those. I'm not even going to. State of Decay 2 is going to do extremely well. I'm not even going to mention Sea of Thieves, but because I'm just not. But it's. I'm going to take it back to the actual console, though. Like the title of the podcast that we're doing here, the little hangout. Xbox Scorpio is everything Microsoft promised and more. And I got that feeling from reading that article. Like, look, all of us are just armchair analysts. We don't know fucking shit from anything, especially when it comes to stuff like this. We weren't there. We didn't see what he saw. Oh, Rich saw it. He came away extremely impressed. So I think, I think a lot of people aren't really giving him the benefit of the doubt because it's Microsoft, right? Because, they must have paid off Digital Foundry.
I've seen that on NeoGAF.
I've seen that all over the place. And because people don't trust Microsoft at all, mainly because of the things they did in the past and stuff like that. But I mean, reading all these articles, I've read them all, I've seen the videos, I feel confident and I feel secure in knowing that the next system we're getting from Microsoft is everything that I wanted it to be. Like you got the increases in the previous Xbox One games, so your backlog games run better, they look better. You have the modes you could switch on, which I really was a stickler for. All that stuff, the backwards compatibility stuff to make games like all that stuff is amazing. The 4K stuff is just fluff on top of it, right? I think the 4K stuff is honestly a buzzword, right? Like, 4K, because that's kind of like the thing now. Because given a choice of 1080p 60 and 4K 30, I will choose 1080p 60 all day. You know what I'm saying? So I'm excited. I'm extremely happy with everything that transpired today. Now Microsoft just needs to bring the games at E3, and it just not better be here's Halo 6 and here's Gears 5 and here's Forza Horizon whatever. Like I need a Perfect Dark would be interesting, a Sunset Overdrive 2, something out of left field to kind of quell this, rising talk of how Xbox doesn't have anything and there's nothing worth playing on the system, whereas like the grass is greener on the other side. Look at all those games that PlayStation's got. I want to see, now that I've seen the future console, I want to see the future games I'm playing on it. Yeah.
Well, that's part of what E3 is going to be. I think that for me, I think that we're going to get, me and you've talked about this, I think we're going to get a pretty standard E3, a lot of 4K content, a lot of that stuff. I think the real telling E3 is 2018.
I think this one's the most important one by far.
Well, I mean, for the games argument, in my opinion, because I don't really see them. I don't see them having. I've seen them having Halo 6. I haven't seen them having Ori 2. I don't know what they've kept close to the chest. It's possible, but usually you around this time you start to get, some kind of rumor or anything, and none of that's there. For me personally, I think that for me to make my definitive choice on that, I think that 2018 will be when you get that full answer, because you could announce Halo 6 and you could announce Forza Horizon 4 and then guys go, we don't got no games, games. And then 2017 comes, and the holiday comes, and we play Crackdown 3, and we play all these big AAAs, and then then the next E3 comes, and we're still saying we don't have games, and then they blow us away with games, and then the whole tune changes. The whole tune changed today. So this is like when we go through these days where everyone's doom and gloom and everything's wrong and nothing's going to change. It's just that day because it's all on a day. Today, this comes, and so many people that I've seen mock Xbox are now like putting up GIFs and putting up funny things saying, "Oh yeah, you destroyed everything. This is amazing." That's just the way people are. And they're fair weathered in a lot of aspects. I think that with the Scorpio, I don't think that they're ever going to take over this market. This generation is won by Sony. They own the Europe. They own big parts of Europe where Xbox doesn't even sell. But I do think that they can take back United States, the #1 market, and I think they can take back UK. And that was a card that they had in 360. That gives them back on stomping foots. Now, I do think that
that's a big thing you just said right there, Tim. They're going to take back the North American market. That is a bold prediction, my friend. They're about 1.5 million units behind. That is a very bold prediction.
I mean, I think that they could towards the end they could catch up because listen, we're talking now 2017, 2019. 4Ks are going to be all over the place, and Pro is just not going to cut it. Now, you're going to say that by then they're going to end the generation. See, I'm of the mind that this generation for Sony is going to last till 2020 to 2021. I don't think that they're in any time they're looking to cut this generation, soon. Anytime soon, because when they do PS5, is it going to be a whole new generation? If it's iterative, are they going to have PS4 support? Is it going to be PSN? I mean, that's talking, so long down the line. But I think that being that Xbox, the Scorpio is the de facto 4K machine, and that's going to help them definitely in North America and definitely in UK. The whole thing is the price point. If they come in at $399, that's really big time deal.
Well, I think the other thing that's really important to note is that Xbox has a fantastic opportunity at this year's E3 in terms of Sony as their competition. We know what Sony is essentially going to be showing at their conference. There isn't going to be a whole lot of surprises there. We're going to see Last of Us 2. We're going to see Days Gone, God of War, Knack 2. There really isn't going to be a whole lot of surprises that we're going to see.
Ridge Racer.
Yeah, Ridge Racer, absolutely. They can really one-up them. If they pull out one or two surprises at their conference, I could see it boding very, very, very well for them this holiday season. But who knows? Sony could come up with something crazy at their conference.
They're in a tough position when it comes to game announcements because, they announced Scalebound early, well, comparatively early. They announced the Phantom Dust remake early and Fable Legends and stuff like that. And then these projects ended up not panning out for whatever reason because Microsoft were working with second parties rather than first parties. And, there's less control over what a second party can do, especially if the second party is working on multiple projects for multiple clients. And, they're in this difficult position now where people want to know what's coming in 2018, 2019, and what deals Phil Spencer has made since he joined Xbox a few years ago. And, what do they do? Do they announce early and risk that disappointment all over again, which is contributed to this narrative we have now? Or do they keep it under wraps and live to fight another day? Can they afford another year without announcing their big guns? It's a very difficult position to be in, and I'm not sure what I'd do in that position. What do you guys think about that?
I honestly think if Microsoft had all the marketing arrangements that Sony has, I think Tim's idea of them gaining back market share would be a lot more viable than it is, because multi-platforms rule the day, and the fact that Sony's essentially going to preemptively block the hugest games of the year, the 4 biggest games of the year, potentially, you're not going to be able to see Scorpio at all. I think that really negatively affects kind of like the prospects of the system this holiday, along with maybe the potential price. You know,
Well, they're gonna take November I think they're gonna take the holiday in North America pretty easily, in my opinion.
I think we're
I
getting
mean,
way too ahead of
even-
ourselves again.
yeah, I mean, yeah.
But, I mean,
Talking
I mean,
about MPDs, we don't even know the name of the thing, the price of the thing, or any of the games coming out in it. Really,
well, I mean, new hardware though usually sells. It's the same thing that happened with Pro last year. I mean, even Xbox, nobody gave Xbox One credit, but it did hold on. But you're right. We can get ahead of ourselves. There could be so much stuff. Albert's just teased even more, saying there's more to Scorpio than we know. I mean. I can't wait to see what this console in person and finally see it there and see the price. So that's for we're gonna know that another day. That's probably gonna be what they're holding E3 or maybe a pre-event. But overall, just kudos to the Microsoft. I think Rand said it best. We expected a lot and we got it, and I feel like we're going ahead in that direction.
I got exactly what I thought we would get, and you know what, Gopher, your buddy, maybe not Gopher's buddy, maybe it was Jez's buddy, but hopefully the people out there that were expecting like Red Dead Redemption and Battlefront 2 and Crackdown 3 and all this stuff to be at this thing aren't like disappointed that they weren't there. That's what I would say. Keep your expectations in check. Like don't hype yourself up through the moon, because honestly, where the fuck did those rumors even come from? Like, who started that shit?
Just fanboys.
Broken
It
telephone.
was miscommunication.
Broken telephone. Jazz, it's all your fault.
It's Jazz's fault.
I was worried that might have contributed to overhyping it for some people, because I did leak my marketing list of Red Dead Redemption 2 and stuff like in around the same time that I leaked the that Eurogamer would be covering it. But I still believe in that information because it all came from a similar source, and they were right about 4K game DVR. They were right about the RAM and all the other stuff that they gave us. They're pretty much right about. So Red Dead Redemption 2 and Battlefront 2 being 4K was all part of that same cache of data. So
Well, you think that Battlefront really is going to hit 60 frames? I mean, it is going to be a DirectX 12 title, so that might help.
So. I really think so, yeah.
It might hit 60
the same
frames for
cache.
multiplayer. I wouldn't be surprised if it hit 60 for the multiplayer and 30 for the single player.
Well, 4K, you think it's going to hit 4K? See, possible, it could be 4K single player easy, and then the multiplayer's the checkerboard.
Yeah. Dave Kinetic in chat, who I believe that's the...
runs TA.
Yeah, I know he's on TA.
Yeah.
He says Polygon's latest Scorpio article is Xbox Scorpio also ditches the Kinect port.
Is he joking?
I don't know.
That's what's so sad is that I'm actually thinking that's real. It might be.
It very well could be. But here's the thing. Good riddance to bad rubbish.
It's a real article. It is. I'm looking at it right now.
It's good riddance to bad rubbish. I've been saying from day one, the Kinect is almost the entire reason where Xbox is in the position they're in. One of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason. So I'm glad that thing, you can still use Kinect because it has that, the USB thing that you can do to bypass or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, but Polygon's very disappointed that you have to use a $40 adapter. That dongle life.
So, yeah, who wrote the article? Is it Ben Kuchera?
No, it's Christopher Grant.
They all use Macs anyway. I would have thought they love dongles and stuff.
No, I think it's more of like, hey, look, this is probably the final nail in the coffin for Kinect. It's dead, guys. Like, I think that was the, it's a bad title. I think that was their goal.
That air guitar game that came out last week was actually pretty fun. The Kinect air guitar game. I don't know if you guys saw.
Like, out of all the news that you could come out with today to talk about, you have a headline that they ditched Kinect.
Yeah.
We may
Where are your priorities at?
We're losing the Kinect, but one of the things that we also have to think about is we're also going to have or at least it's predicted that we're going to have a decent amount of VR coverage. I mean, one of the main points that they were touting this console back a year ago was the VR capabilities of it, and I think that they got to be really careful that they don't have another Connect situation with how much coverage they dedicate to VR titles on the system this year.
Yeah, they can show that it works, but if it's like VR, oh, here's Halo, but it's also a VR experience where you can pretend you're in a room with Cortana.
Ooh,
then
baby.
yeah, then that's a lot of. Oh,
Is Gopher gonna cuddle with Cortana in VR? Look, that is another thing Microsoft really talked about when they revealed the system, premium VR experiences or whatever the heck, or right? Like, but lately they redesigned the Scorpio webpage on Xbox.com. I don't believe any of the articles, if I'm remembering correctly, they didn't really mention VR. Seems like Microsoft is really, really distancing itself away from VR. They're like I don't know. Maybe what do you guys think about that? Is this kind of a sign that VR didn't catch on?
I think the reason they're doing this is because, they want OEMs and they want the third parties to take the lead on VR for Scorpio. They want to provide the platform for VR, but they want Oculus, they want whoever I don't know if it's Oculus, but they want whoever's making head-mounted displays for this thing. Like, we know Acer's building one, Dell and HP are supposedly building one. They want them to take the lead on VR for Scorpio, and Microsoft just want to be like, VR, if VR works, then great. If it doesn't work, then we haven't put our stamp on it. We haven't sold our console based on this feature and let it go out to die like we did with Kinect. So they're putting the responsibility for VR's success on Scorpio in the hands of the companies that believe in VR and mixed reality and whatever. And that's why they're sort of taking this hands-off approach. They probably want Facebook to handle all that stuff. They've got Oculus Rift and HTC Vive demos in Microsoft stores around America, but Microsoft themselves haven't really built a headset yet, and it's because they want to control the operating system that powers VR, but they don't necessarily believe at this point that it's something that they necessarily need to be involved in. So that's my take on it. I think that they believe in holograms and augmented reality. They don't necessarily believe that VR enhances the gaming experience, and I'm not personally convinced that it does either. I don't know what you guys think.
I personally haven't tried VR, so I really don't have an opinion either way. I know Maka's done the Naughty Home VR demo twice at E3. He went back for seconds. Naughty America. So he's a big believer in VR.
No, my thing with VR is VR, in my opinion, like if you have a game and you're making it as a normal game, don't add VR just to like tack on, a checkbox. It's like adding multiplayer to a single player game that doesn't need it. Like, don't do it. And if you're making a VR game like from the box, make it actually use the VR. Like, it's one or the other. Don't like half-ass both sides and then call your game a VR experience. Like, the Jackal experience for Call of Duty, it was bad. I mean, other than maybe playing it once to get, a little bit of use of your PSVR, I would never recommend that thing ever again. And it's like, what's the point? It's a waste of time. It's a waste of your resources. There's a lot of people saying, who's gonna use the Scorpio's power when PlayStation has the more consoles? And it's like, motherfuckers, look how many PlayStation experiences there were, and look how many PSVRs they had pre-ordered. Like, there's no way that these companies are looking at these PSVR experiences, making them for potentially 1 million customers, and they're not going to make something similar for a Scorpio, if there is more sales. So, that plays on both sides. But like for VR, don't half-ass both sides. Pick one or the other and just go with that.
See, my take of the VR, Rand kept asking me today. He's like, "Oh, they didn't mention VR," and I think VR in itself is in trouble. And one of the big things that it's trouble is it really doesn't have a lot of AAA development behind it. It had a Resident Evil, but other than that, it's really kind of these demo type things or these whatever you want to call them type experiences, and to show that off, like. If Xbox is going to tout VR, they want to show something, And that means that they have to have something in the pipeline that's really, AAA development type thing where it looks like high fidelity. Now you can say, is that going to be Fallout? It's going to be Fallout 4, but that's one of the core problems is that AAA development they're not touching VR because it's making no money. So you're just getting these smaller type games, and that's one of the problems that VR is going to face. And one of the reasons why I don't think Xbox is really Rand just texted me something. I don't even know.
All right. You know what? Hold on, 1 second, Jez. 1 second, Jez. I have to get ready to go to school, so I want to give everybody their last thoughts from the day, what they thought. So go ahead, Jez. Give me a takeaway thoughts for the day before we get out of here.
Well, I've always said this. I've always said that Scorpio could be 20 teraflops, but they need the games to back it up. And I personally, I'm more than happy with what Xbox brings to the table for games. I barely, people were saying earlier how video games journalists don't play games. I barely have time. I'm writing all day, every day, and deadlines constantly, and all my spare time goes towards playing games, and that little spare time that I do have, I don't have time to play everything. So it's like I put 120 hours into Mass Effect Andromeda for the review, but there's just no way that I could do that so often, So, but where I'm personally happy with the Xbox's lineup, there is that narrative, and the media that cover PlayStation and Xbox, they're going to keep pushing that contentious narrative because it gets clicks, and they want to appeal to, the Xbox fans are happy, so they want to give Sony fans a reason to click now. The Xbox fans have had their reason to click. Now the Sony fans have their reason to click, and that's what it's about for companies that cover both ecosystems. I'm really glad that I don't have to cover PlayStation because I don't even have to think about these things. I just cover what I love, and what is my passion. I don't have to think about how can I spin this into an article to make clicks. I don't have to think about that. So for Microsoft to head off that narrative, they need to show the games, and they've got E3
games.
To do it and beyond.
It's all about the games, right? Games, basically.
Games. That's what I think.
And
that's
where can everybody find you, Jesse? Since
I'm on Twitter at JZCorden, JZCorden, and come say hi. I'll follow you back if you are an Xbox fan.
All right, Maka, hit me with the final thoughts. Tell people where
Scorpio
they can find
takeaways. The Twitter fingers version, 140 characters, maybe a little more. I'm impressed by the hardware. I'm glad to see the benefits for Xbox One games, and I'm glad to see benefits for gamers who intend to stay on 1080p displays. I think they've done pretty good messaging, although all of the articles altogether I thought were a little sloppy on Digital Foundry's part. Would have been nice if it was a little more concise and all the messages were kind of given the same way. It's a good first step by Microsoft. I'm excited to see what they can do with the power. That's more or less it. If you want to find me, you can find me on youtube.com/Maka91 Productions. I make gaming guides and tutorials, so you won't find me talking too much about this kind of stuff. But if you're looking for how to beat a boss in ukulele, I might have you covered next week.
That's right. He makes really good guys, so check him out. He's also on TXR podcast with me and Tim, so you will find him talking about this stuff there. So
yeah, that's true.
Gopher, we broke your virginity today. It's popped. Live podcast. Give me your thoughts. Final thoughts on Scorpio. Stuff.
Extremely impressed with the articles today. I thought this was a fantastic peep show tease before the big E3 event. I thought that some of the features they discussed were fantastic. As someone without a 4K TV currently, I'm still a bit as to whether or not I should purchase the console day one without the 4K TV.
Says the guy who buys $400 collector's editions.
I need my stats.
Whose room is decorated in collector's editions that are like $500. I'm not going to buy.
More sensible.
Yeah.
I need my statues, but I'm cautiously optimistic. But I was very, very impressed. Very impressed today.
All right, and the people can follow you at Loveboat Gopher, right? One
on
word.
Twitter. Yes,
That's
sir.
right. Timmy, big day for you.
Yeah.
Final thoughts on Scorpio. Let's hear him. Final
They
thoughts.
nailed it. They nailed it. They did everything. Not the way I like I said. I didn't. I think they exceeded my expectations because it looks like they really planned this for a long time, and there is a story about that, which maybe one day will be told. But they've been planning this a long time, and they targeted to have the power in mind, and this is what you get. This is what all Xbox fans, the hardcores that like follow the stuff. This is like their dream, and today was the Super Bowl, and we won. And I mean, this is just a waiting game now. It's kind of back to waiting, which is kind of annoying. But today was definitely one for the ages.
Today was not the Super Bowl, my dude. Today we clinched a playoff spot.
All right.
We clinched a playoff spot at
Super Bowl.
best.
I agree. Well,
Right.
Super Bowl for me. Yeah, I've been waiting for this for a long time.
Long
So,
time.
I mean, this was like 3 days in the thing. There's so much stuff that went on, and Rand knows and Jez knows. There's so much shit that was just since last Friday. It's been crazy, but it's been great.
Big day, big day.
So yeah, I'll have the links to all their Twitters in the description if you guys would like to follow them. As for me, thank you so much for dropping by. Thanks for checking out the video earlier today. Motherfucking smash that like button, as Mako always says.
I already did my duties in chat.
That's right. I already gave all my thoughts about Scorpio in the previous video, so if you want to check out my 20-minute video where I give my thoughts, check it out. I really like it. I like the messaging. I'm excited. I'm excited to be an Xbox gamer. But bring the games, Microsoft. Bring the games, and everything will be fine. And with that, we'll see everybody tomorrow for a new vid, and next week for Xbox 2 and TXR Podcast on Monday. Later, guys.
Peace.